Why is it that the more you try to run away from a problem, the bigger it seems to grow? Why is it that even after so much effort, after so many conscious attempts to change, the same pain returns, sometimes stronger, sometimes in different forms, but always with the same root? Maybe you've tried everything: therapies, affirmations, rituals, strategies to control the mind. But there's a truth that few have the courage to face. The more you resist, the more you feed what you're trying to avoid. What you feel, what bothers you, what takes away your peace, only remains there for one reason: you don't stop observing it. Not with your eyes, but with your emotional field. Every fearful thought, every physical tension, every attempt to force a solution is like adding more wood to the fire you want to put out. Your reality doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you vibrate while observing. And as long as your attention remains stuck on the problem, it's the problem that will grow. Today, you're going to see what's really behind this invisible cycle that keeps you trapped. You'll understand why so much internal struggle only reinforces what you want to eliminate. And more than that, you'll feel the key begin to turn when you choose the opposite of resistance: space, inner silence, a shift in frequency. Because your freedom doesn't begin when the problem disappears. It begins when you stop feeding it. The invisible cycle: resistance, observation, repetition. There is a silent, almost invisible cycle that governs most human suffering. It doesn't start in the external world, nor in circumstances, nor in the people around you. It starts within, at the exact point where you react, tense up, and resist. When something happens and you feel discomfort, the first impulse is to try to push that feeling away. Push it far. Deny it. Distract yourself. Look for quick solutions. But subtly and almost automatically, your attention keeps returning to the same place. The internal focus keeps revolving around what hurts you. Even when you say, "I want to get rid of this," you're actually confirming the existence of it with all the strength of your emotion. Resistance is not just a conscious thought of rejection. Resistance is a vibrational state of tension, defense, and constant alertness. And everything you observe in that state grows stronger, because life, the field, reality, respond to your dominant emotional frequency. It's as if your consciousness works like a camera lens. Whatever you focus on gains clarity, form, and density. Imagine a simple situation. You have a small pain in your body, something that could pass in minutes. But as you begin to observe that pain with fear, worry, and the expectation that it will worsen, your attention fixes there. And the more you observe it, the more your nervous system registers it as a threat. More cortisol circulates, more muscles contract. What was a passing discomfort becomes an installed problem. The same happens with emotions, with thoughts, with memories, with traumas. Resistance creates a field of emotional observation so intense that your energy system cannot release it. It's like trying to put out a fire by blowing on it forcefully, thinking you'll control the flames. But instead, the fire feeds on your own effort to extinguish it. This cycle starts with an initial trigger, something that sets you off: a memory, a conversation, a feeling of lack, fear of the future, regret from the past. The name doesn't matter. What matters is what comes next: the state of resistance. This state activates the second link in the chain: your emotional observation. You start looking at the problem not just with your eyes, but with your entire body. Your energy field contracts around it. Your emotions revolve around the pain. And the more you observe, the more you reinforce it. This reinforcement is vibrational, not rational. The universe is not reading your thoughts as words, it's feeling your energetic emission. Repetition comes as a natural consequence, because what your field sustains, the world manifests. The external life only reflects back, like a quantum mirror, the internal pattern you're transmitting. And perhaps without realizing it, you've been living this cycle for years. Resistance, charged observation, repetition, And then, more resistance, a dance between tension and frustration, where every attempt to get rid of the problem only anchors it even more. The cultural mistake, the illusion that resistance is strength. From a very young age, we were taught that resisting is synonymous with strength, that holding on tight, fighting against our own emotions, forcing the mind to be positive, and facing everything with tightness in the chest was a sign of courage. This is a deep cultural programming which shaped not only the way we react to suffering, but also the way we perceive the healing process itself. Phrases like, "Don't give up," "Don't surrender," "Fight your fears" were repeated so many times that they became almost a collective mantra. The problem is that when applied to the emotional and vibrational field, these ideas lead us in the opposite direction of true transformation. What seems like strength is often just control disguised as courage. It's the fear of feeling, camouflaged by a facade of determination. It's the desperate attempt to avoid pain when, in fact, what the body and consciousness most need is space to integrate, release, and dissolve what's stuck. When you try to defeat fear, you're confirming its existence within you. When you try to fight anxiety, you're vibrationally feeding anxiety with every cell in your body. When you try to block negative thoughts, you're creating a mental tension field that amplifies exactly what you wanted to eliminate. The culture of resistance creates a cycle of internal war, an invisible battle between what you feel and what you think you should feel, between the real emotion and the idealized emotional state. This constant conflict is not strength, it's emotional exhaustion, it's energetic drainage. It's the root of many cases of chronic anxiety, insomnia, discouragement, and even physical illnesses. In the vibrational field, resistance is synonymous with fixation. The more you oppose an energy, the more you connect to it. It's like trying to push a wall and discovering that the more force you apply, the more it pushes back with the same intensity. Because in the universe, everything you emit returns. True strength lies in creating internal space, in recognizing what you feel without needing to react, in observing without going to war, in allowing the emotion to pass through you without clinging to it, without feeding it with fear or rejection. There is a turning point that only happens when you stop treating yourself like a battlefield. When you understand that acceptance is not resignation, it's release, it's not giving up. It's vibrational intelligence, it's not weakness, it's a conscious choice to step out of the frequency of resistance. Culture taught us to resist to survive, but consciousness asks us to learn to release, to live. The question that remains is, if all this internal struggle isn't working, what does the quantum field really expect from you? What kind of response does the universe send back when you change the quality of your observation? The quantum field and the truth about your observation. The universe does not respond to your words, nor to your deepest desires. It responds in a subtle and non-negotiable way to the vibrational field you project while observing your own reality. This is one of the least understood laws, but one of the most decisive in the creation of your life experience. The quantum field, which is the invisible matrix where all possibilities coexist, does not operate solely through conscious intention. It operates through frequency, through a state of presence, through what you observe with emotion, with loaded attention, with energetic involvement. And it is precisely here that lies the greatest mistake of those who try to change reality only with positive thinking or empty affirmations. As long as you observe the problem with tension, the field understands that this is what is active within you. It doesn't matter if you say you want peace, prosperity, or emotional freedom. If what vibrates in you is fear, worry, or scarcity, that is what reality keeps returning to you. Because at the quantum level, the language is resonance, not intention. A simple analogy: imagine that your consciousness is like a radio. You may want to hear a new song, a lighter sound, something that inspires you. But as long as your internal dial is tuned to the same frequency of fear, doubt, or resistance, the song that will play will always be the same. There's no point in wanting a different tune without changing the station. And this emotional observation is often so automatic that you don't even realize how much you're feeding what you want to push away. Every time you mentally relive a problem, every time you react with tension at the slightest sign of discomfort, every time you try to control what you feel, you're sending a vibrational command to the field. This is still real for me. That's why patterns repeat. Different people, new situations, but the same underlying feeling. Because the vibration hasn't changed. The lens of observation remains the same. The field just reflects back. Now, I want to invite you to make a small gesture of awareness. If you feel that all this makes sense, if somewhere inside you this truth is already echoing, like this video now, and write in the comments. I choose to change my frequency, not just as a participation ritual, but as a first conscious act of redirecting your field. This simple movement of recognizing the pattern, of choosing another vibration, already begins to alter the way you will absorb what comes next. Silencing the internal struggle, the real turning point. There is a moment when the mind gets tired of fighting, the body can no longer bear so much tension, and the soul silently starts to ask for something different. No more a technique, no more a new control strategy, but a state of conscious surrender, of internal space, of breathing. Silencing the internal struggle does not mean giving up on change. It means letting go of the battlefield you created within yourself. For years, maybe decades, you've been conditioned to react to everything you felt, to try to fix, solve, eliminate, suppress. Every time an uncomfortable emotion arose, the first response was a movement of control. Closing the chest, holding your breath, creating resistance. But the real turning point happens when you do the opposite. When you stop trying to control what you feel and simply allow the energy to follow its own course. This is not passivity, it's vibrational intelligence. It's like opening a window in a stuffy room. Not to force the air out, but to create space for the flow to happen. The inner silence begins with a very simple but profoundly transformative choice. To stop reacting to your own discomfort. To observe the emotion without wanting to change it. To let it exist, without labeling it as good or bad, without seeking an explanation, without creating new mental stories around what is emerging. Maybe in the first few minutes, the mind will try to resist this process. It will want to argue. It will say you need to act, solve, think of solutions. But if you hold the space, if you breathe within the tension, if you simply feel what's there without escape, something begins to change. The energy of the emotion starts to move. The internal rigidity starts to dissolve. The vibrational field begins to open. What once seemed like an insurmountable weight becomes just a sensation in motion. What was once an obsessive thought turns into a flow that comes and goes. Because when you don't react, the vibration loses strength. When you don't feed it, it empties. When you observe with presence, the field reorganizes. This is the real turning point. It's not an effort to become positive. It's not an act of denial. It's a state of conscious permission, of silent presence, where you stop being a field of resistance and start being a space of transformation. Many people believe they need to do something to free themselves from difficult emotions. But what binds you the most is precisely this compulsion to solve what, in fact, only needs to be felt and released. Not with effort, but with presence, with breathing, with acceptance. True liberation does not happen when the problem disappears. It happens when the problem loses the power to control your internal state. And that only happens when you silence the struggle. How to redirect your observation intelligently. After understanding that the internal struggle only reinforces what you want to release, a natural question arises. Where should you direct your attention now? How can you consciously choose the focus that will begin to alter your frequency and consequently your reality? Redirecting observation intelligently does not mean ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't exist. Nor is it about creating false positivity or repeating affirmations without feeling them. True redirection is a process of active awareness, a vibrational choice that begins with the simple decision to step out of the frequency of resistance and move toward the space of neutrality and later creation. The first step is to recognize when the pattern of resistance is happening. This requires presence, noticing the body becoming tense, the mind spinning in circles, the heart racing, not with judgment, but with a look of conscious curiosity, as if you were watching from the outside, like the silent observer of an internal process. The second step is the pause, not a mechanical pause, but a moment of energetic realignment. Taking a deep breath, feeling the body, allowing the emotion to exist, but without entering it, without identifying with it. This pause creates space in the vibrational field. It creates a momentary break in the repetition cycle. And then with that space created comes the choice. And perhaps this is the most challenging part, because choosing a new focus is not about forcing yourself to think of something positive. It's about sincerely asking, what do I really want to feel right now? Not what you think you should feel, but what at that moment might represent a slightly lighter, more fluid vibration, more aligned with what you want to create. Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's neutrality. Maybe it's just the feeling of breathing more calmly. The size of the emotional change doesn't matter. What matters is the direction of the choice. Because in the quantum field, movement is cumulative. Small focus adjustments, maintained with consistency, begin to alter your base frequency. A simple and powerful way to redirect observation is to change the internal question. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what can I choose to observe now that brings me more lightness? This change of question already creates an immediate pattern break, because it takes your mind out of the victim narrative and places it in the role of conscious creator. Over time, this redirection stops being a technique and becomes a new way of existing. You begin to realize that the external reality is just a reflection of the internal place from which you choose to observe everything, and that with each choice, with each small shift in attention, you are writing a new field of possibilities around you. This does not mean that the old patterns won't try to pull you back. They will. The resistance cycle is persistent. But the difference is that now, you are aware. Now, you know you have a choice, that you can breathe, that you can observe from a new place, that you can interrupt the old circuit before it takes over your entire state. This intelligence and observation is the beginning of a new reality, a reality where you are no longer a hostage to the emotions that arise, but the master of how you choose to respond to them. But maybe you're wondering, how does all this apply to real-life situations? What are the concrete examples of resistance that are keeping the suffering active in your field? In the next video, we'll bring specific cases so you can recognize yourself and start releasing for good what's holding you back. Real examples of resistance that keep suffering alive. Maybe you still ask yourself, but what in practice does this resistance that holds me back really mean? The answer lies in the small daily reactions, in the automatic responses that you no longer even notice, but that are vibrating inside you like invisible commands that sustain exactly what you most want to change. When you feel a negative thought arising, and instead of just observing it, you fight it strongly, try to expel it, try to argue with it. You are resisting. You are keeping that pattern alive. As if by rejecting it, you were telling the universe, this is too important to ignore. Keep showing it to me. When an uncomfortable emotion appears like fear, sadness, or anger, and you push it to the background, disguise it with productivity, or occupy yourself with any distraction to avoid feeling, you are, in fact, sealing that energy in your field. You are freezing the vibration, keeping it there, circulating, waiting for the next opportunity to emerge with even more strength. Resistance also happens in relationships. When you think obsessively about that person who hurt you, mentally reliving the conversations, rehearsing responses, imagining confrontations, you are not freeing yourself from the pain. You are amplifying the energetic link. You are reinforcing the vibrational bond with the frequency of hurt. Even if the other person is miles away, the connection remains alive inside you, fed by your own attention. Another common example is resistance to scarcity. When the fear of not having money, opportunities, or recognition dominates you, and you start living in a state of alert, analyzing your bank statement with tension, comparing your life with others, or trying to force the universe to deliver a quick solution, you are not attracting abundance. You are creating an even denser field of lack, because your observation is fixed on absence. And perhaps the deepest example of resistance is the one involving old memories, past situations that still provoke emotional reactions whenever you remember them. No matter how many years have passed, as long as you react with pain, with revolt, or with self-judgment, the quantum field continues to understand that this vibration is current, that it's part of who you are today, and therefore, it keeps returning echoes of that story in your present experiences. Resistance is attachment disguised as protection. It is the fear of feeling dressed up as strength. It is the effort to control, painted as emotional responsibility. But the truth is, the more you try to push away what you feel, the more what you feel keeps you trapped. Real liberation begins when you stop pushing and start observing with internal space. When you decide you will no longer run from what needs to be felt, and by doing so, you begin to dissolve the emotional charge that sustains the suffering. Your pain is not stubborn, it's just waiting to be acknowledged and released. Not with effort, but with presence. Not with struggle, but with acceptance. Now, take a deep breath. Feel your body. Recognize what's alive inside you right now. And remember, you are not broken. You're just tired of resisting. And that is already the beginning of your healing. We've reached the end of our journey, and maybe now you're feeling something different inside. A slight opening, a new perspective, or even that deep silence that comes when the mind finally understands it doesn't need to fight anymore. Today you saw that what holds you back the most is not the problem itself, but the way you observe, carry, and resist it. You've learned that letting go is not giving up. It's choosing to stop feeding what suffocates you, and that changing your frequency is not an effort. It's a choice of presence. If this journey made sense to you, write in the comments, "I choose to let go." That way I'll know you stayed with me until the end, and that in some way this message has already started to resonate in your field.